Because while Mark Carney pulls these distractions in terms of promising a magical pipeline that I think he seriously doesn't believe is going to happen and seriously doesn't want to happen, this is all politicking. And while he introduces bill after bill after bill for censorship and surveillance of Canadians, and while he travels around the world sealing little micro trade deals for Canada and for the assistance of his old company, Brookfield Asset Management, what is he up to? Well, Mark Carney is potentially manipulating Canadian pension plan, not just the CPP, but potentially public service pension plan. He's manipulating these plans, and this is circular investment. And this video, we'll get to this video in a minute, but this is like a massive Ponzi scheme. And let's have a look. These are the Maple 8, the 8 largest public pension funds in Canada. They are collectively known as the Maple 8. Thank you, Coco McCool, for this. And are a significant part of the Canadian investment landscape. The specific funds included are Alberta Investment Management Corporation, British Columbia Investment Management Corporation, Caisse de dépôt et placement du Québec, Canada Pension Plan Investment Board, Healthcare of Ontario Pension Plan, Ontario Municipal Employees Retirement System, Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, Public Sector Pension Investment Plan, last but not least. So those are the potential pension funds that are available to Mark Carney. Now, I believe we have a quick video on how the CPP itself is a Ponzi scheme.
Work out that they're actually getting a nominal rate of return by 4%. And, I don't really go that much about the real rate of return, because the real rate of return is basically calculated using a fake inflation number. So let's just go with the nominal rate of return for now. Okay. Trevor?
Yeah.
Any ideas? You want to guess, like, why, if they get 8%, 9%, why is the retiree only going to get 4%?
Josh, I'm just too flabbergasted to even take a guess as to why the annualized earnings are only 4%. I'm sure it's going to really irritate me, but let's find out.
All right, here we go. And this is the Office of the Financial Superintendent. This is the latest actuarial report. It's a big, long report. Okay. We're due for a new one at the end of the year. Probably 150 pages long. But all the values of CPP and all the diversity and equity and inclusion and all their goals and objectives, legalese, and go all the way down, 150 pages until you get to right at the end. Footnote 14. Footnote 14 is the reason they should just put this thing on. And it says, as at December 31st, 2021, under the closed group approach. So let me tell you how they try to sell this to people. It's like they say it's the open group approach, because obviously we're going to get new people entering CPP who are going to pay into the program. So under the open approach, open's a good word, right? We should be able to use that. Open's a good word. We could just openly use the new participants' CPP contributions to pay the old participants, okay? But if you calculate it on a closed group approach, so what that means is if you calculated the net present value of the obligations that you have today and measured them against the assets you have today, the actuarial obligations of the base plan, this isn't according to me, this isn't according to the Fraser Institute, this is the Office of Financial Superintendent, okay, are equal to 1,686 billion. Okay, so 1,686 billion, 1.6 trillion. Okay, the actuarial obligation
research on Mark Carney's financial adventures, going all the way back to GFANZ when we did this report on the climate cabal that won't leave us alone. And this GFANZ, of course, was an attempt to force banks, to force companies into a green energy policy, a green energy stance. And the U.S. Congress actually set up a committee, or directed a committee to investigate this, to say that this was a consortium, this was a cabal, an environmental cabal, and Mark Carney should cease and desist. And so that's when a lot of the huge banks in the United States dropped out of this green energy policy. So Mark Carney just keeps looking for other avenues. And that brings us to the video I want you all to watch very carefully this afternoon. Because as I think it was Cassandra Moore just pointed out in her comment section, it's all about financing Brookfield. This is what this prime minister is all about. The corruption is waist deep, perhaps elbows deep, perhaps neck deep. We have never seen a government operate like this. Mark Carney doesn't care if his caucus is unified. They don't care if they like his budget. He doesn't care if they like this pipeline project. These are all distractions. This government, this liberal government, is all about ensuring it's Brookfield first, not Canada first. It's Brookfield strong, not Canada strong. It's all about nourishing and edifying and encouraging and pushing forward his financial interests. Now, this might shock you to say, well, how is he getting away with this? The thing is, he's doing this in the open. He's not doing this as a clandestine operation that nobody knows about. You know, you've heard it said that sometimes the best place to hide something is in the open, where people just can't see it. This is such a complicated process that most Canadians don't understand it and are not exactly encouraged to understand it. So Mark Carney's getting away with it. So let's listen to what he's doing.
Catastrophic death spiral, and he is making a ludicrous amount of money in the process. I'm going to preface this and tell you a little bit about Mark Carney because it's important information. I will keep this as simple as possible so it is easy to understand, and I will use analogies to simplify it further on the end so you can grasp exactly what has been going on. So Mark Carney championed net zero. He started GFANZ in the UK in 2019. The accumulated total of the capital access was over $130 trillion. His net zero actually started to collapse when Republican attorneys started to subpoena banks in the U.S. over anti-competition regulations. JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Citigroup, Wells Fargo, Goldman Sachs, and so forth all exited net zero. So he championed de-risking green energy investment because there's no return on green energy. You'll be a decade to 2 decades before it's actually profitable, if ever. And this is very important because what you do is you take federal funds, taxpayer funds, you absorb all of the liability and cost to make sure that the investment succeeds, and you offer this as a guarantee so the private investors will come and invest in that project. Bloomberg announced in 2020 that Carney was the unofficial economic advisor to Trudeau. Since he is unpaid and unofficial, it does not trigger the Conflict of Interest Act, and he has complete influence over Trudeau's policy with zero consequence. So the 3 key figures are Chrystia Freeland, Justin Trudeau, and Mark Carney. Chrystia Freeland being the finance minister. From 2020 to 2025, approximately $190 billion has been allotted to de-risk green energy investment. Now, the problem comes when GFANZ is collapsing, that $130 trillion disappears. There's only one place that you can access that kind of capital as cash on hand, and that is a country's pension fund. So through Trudeau, he created all the de-risk policy. Through Freeland, who Trudeau appointed, and remember, Mark Carney is the godfather of her child, the Canadian Growth Fund is created for $15 billion, which is used to de-risk green energy investment. Stick with me here because this is very important. The public service pension has very strict regulations for investing. It is only applicable to very low risk and typically an IRR compounding return. So you can't take pension money and de-risk green energy investment, and you can't use it to invest in green energy because it's typically a net loss. However, Mark's first transition fund, Brookfield Growth Transition Fund 1, later renamed 2, has PSP pension funds and Ontario Teachers pension funds as limited partners LLPs in that transition fund.
It's very dangerous. It's very dangerous to be dabbling, manipulating, playing around with union pension. You know what happened to Jimmy Hoffa? Because he was using the union pension, the Teamster union pension, to play the stock market, to get individually wealthy. He was using that money. And you know what happened to Jimmy Hoffa? Because either the Teamsters or the mob that was at that time controlling the Teamsters union said enough. So this is a highly dangerous practice for Mark Carney to get into. And because people don't like their pension funds disappearing. And that's exactly what potentially could happen here. They could lose it all. But who's going to get rich off this? Brookfield, Mark Carney, the crony capitalists.
In there. And I thought, how did he get pension funds into that transition fund? Trudeau, obviously. All the board members of the Public Service Pension and the Canadian Growth Fund are selected through a process of the Treasurer and the Finance Minister. At the end of the day, the Prime Minister gets final approval. These individuals are paid between 6 and 7 figures, and the Prime Minister can remove them at any time without cause. Do you think you would listen to me if I can remove your 7-figure salary just like that? Yet these management systems are considered bipartisan. They are a political tool. The PSP also created a subsidiary called the CCFIM that manages that $15 billion Canadian Growth Fund. Try not to lose me here. So the final close on the Brookfield Transition Fund 2, which Mark managed with Teskey, is $20 billion. And there is another transition fund with contracts with the UAE called the Catalytic Transition Fund for billions of dollars as well. Because this is routed through subsidiaries, disclosure becomes obscured. Now we're going to get to the smoking gun. This is just one example. Brookfield makes an initial investment of $300 million from this transition fund into Entropy Inc. in Canada. That is now a majority stake, and because it's not an investment in profit return, it meets the threshold for the PSP, which is your pension money. So a typical management fee at Brookfield for the entire fund is between 1.5 and 2%. What generally happens is as 100% of the capital is returned, I say returned, but you don't actually return the funds, there's then a 5 to 8% hurdle after that. There's a catch-up phase where Brookfield will collect 20%, and then after that, there's an 80-20 split to the pension fund, which is the LLP, a limited partner. I should put that in the beginning. So the typical time frame and thresholds for Mark Carney to collect on that extraordinary 20% could take up to 10 to 15 years. And now comes the magic. They used the Canadian Growth Fund to de-risk the entire project on a contract for 15 years on a guarantee for $16 million a year and $200 million up front. That means all liability, all debt, and all carrying right to the finish line is taken on by the Canadian taxpayer. So we would support the project right to the end, be at a net loss as the completed project belongs to a foreign entity who collects all of the profits and reaps all of the rewards. If you didn't think that was bad enough, here is the nuke. When a government contract de-risks the investment, it is legally binded and can be front-loaded immediately, which means that 15-year valuation that is down the road occurs instantaneously, jumps the hurdle, and the 20% kicks in immediately. So not only are we at a net loss, the project will be foreign owned, and we have debt for the next 15 years, and Carney gets paid immediately. Do you have any idea what the 20% payout plus management fee, even after you pay the other managers and the dividends are separated, just for Mark Carney? If he is able to de-risk the entire platform, and he's doing it right in front of your eyes, we are de-risking the UAE commitments, and the UAE has the contract with the Catalyst Transition Fund that he also managed. The maximum dollar amount is between $750 million to $1.2 $2 billion. If you didn't notice immediately after the budget was passed, all of these commitments start rolling in because they're all being de-risked. And the incredible part is this. He took your pension money because you can't take tax money. It's not there. There's no pile of cash. Put it in a fund to attract other investors. It is a perfect circle, a snake eating its tail. And at the end of it, there's a net loss. We don't own the product. We don't own the profits. We'll get a little bit of tax and maybe some jobs. And Mark Carney will be a billionaire. That's like me taking all the money in your bank account, holding on to it to invest, taking half your check when you get it, taking 5% to put back in this money I took from you, and then keeping the rest. I hope you understand as this continues, this is the ratio change.
Now, this otherwise would be called a scam. This is what this is. This is how people get independently, vastly wealthy beyond most people's wildest imagination. And it's the average guy and woman who gets stuck with it. And this is what's going to happen here. If this, and I can't see how this is not going to happen now. Mark Carney is going to be kept in power with those 7 new Democrat MPs, and it's just going to get worse.
Country budget officers talking about. The debt is not only escaping the GDP, it's a contractual obligation for up to 20 years in some cases, meaning you can't escape. We are going to reach a no escape velocity, and even if you get him out of office, the damage cannot be recovered from. I have my suspicions that Chrystia Freeland was fully aware that this was going on, potentially has her own investments offshore, and she got the hell out as fast as she could when that last budget dropped, because Trudeau's budget was Carney's budget. Trudeau, Freeland, Mark Carney, complicit across the board. And if any member of that PSP fund signed an LPA, that's the limited partnership agreement, with simple interest instead of compound interest, which is the standard IRR, they're going to have a big problem. Because I ran the numbers upside down and backwards to see how fast I could make my money if I were Mark Carney and I was influencing the policy, and I would have put in simple interest annually versus compounding, because your front load becomes even faster. So every time we de-risk a project for 10 to 15 years, the firm like Brookfield front loads the entire contract for the full 15 years because it's black and white, and jumps straight to the finish line to get paid instantly. Think about that. Guys, I'm not talking about a little bit of money. The $6 million in stocks that they talk about, they told you that on purpose. Because when the Brookfield representative was in the House being questioned recently, who was clearly trembling, mentioned the stocks, but he also said carried interest.
Increases, the value of those instruments increase. There are also carried interest entitlements that relate more specifically to funds that we manage.
Which means your guy, Mark Carney, is going to be a billionaire. Do you understand why he came to Canada? Because he spent 4 years building this and trying to access our pension funds. Because it's cash on hand. He needed it. That's what he was after the entire time. And I said it, and he literally said it in a press conference the other day and mentioned the $2 trillion.
Over the next year, we will take significant measures to elevate our relationship. The Minister of Finance will lead a delegation of Canada's pension funds, $2 trillion of capital, which almost begins to sound significant in the UAE. $2 trillion in capital, the Canadian pension funds. They will come here next year early to deepen existing partnerships and develop new investment opportunities together.
It might be a coincidence. I ran a statistical analysis on the probability of all of those policies landing and those investments occurring in that exact chronological order. And it would be the same as if you built a plane, I built a runway, and you accidentally landed on that runway and not even knew where it was. It is impossible. It was facilitated by Carney, Trudeau, and Chrystia Freeland, and Carney actually did it all because Trudeau is as dumb as a bag of bricks, which I've said. This is cascade payment, and I've left out about 1,000 details that would just overcomplicate it all for you, but all you need to know is that it's a snake eating its tail. It's a completely false payback on our own pension funds with our tax money. Pension, tax money. This is what's happening. Go ahead and look it up. Send this to your friends. Send this to any economist that you know. Send it to Mark Carney. Send it to every PSP board member. Send it to Chrystia Freeland. I want everyone to know exactly what he's doing.
So the UAE might have your pension fund. This is why Mark Carney made a big dash in the middle of a visit by the King and Queen of Sweden. He made a huge dash to the UAE and to placate his investors, to make sure the process continued, that the plan unfolded. So what Mark Carney is up to. I think that video was as clear as it possibly can be. Maybe we have to reiterate some of the points. But this is about a massive financial scam that's happening in front of you in broad daylight. In broad daylight. It's because most people just simply don't understand. Not because you're stupid, because this is high finance that most of us will never have to grapple with. But we can sure as hell begin to understand it, because it could mean financial catastrophe for us. Yeah, it's one of the protesters at the farmers' rally last weekend in Ottawa. And believe me, Brookfield, WEF, Mark Carney, behind all of this. Behind all of this. And let's have a look at the merchandise. And here's some of our latest stickers. We're quite proud of these. And this is, we talked about PSYOPs yesterday with John Carpe. We talked about PSYOPs last week. And this is a PSYOP that's going on right now with the pipeline. He's getting a lot of people upset about this. But Big Brother is watching you, because what's the other thing that Mark Carney is very good at? Introducing legislation aimed at taking away your freedom of speech. And yes, we are conspiracy knowers. That's who we are. I wanted to highlight these ones again. And of course, we still have the ostrich stickers available, and proceeds are going to the farm. And the ostrich hoodies, very, very popular. Keep buying them. Proceeds, again, are going to Universal Ostrich Farms. Katie Pisitney and her family. These have proven to be very, very popular. Now, and that, of course, I talked about this the other night at a speaking engagement I was at. This is the legacy of Trudeau Carney. It's an attack on basic foundational freedom of speech. And that's what this government has been all about. From day one. Now, in the time remaining, I just want to show you. The time remaining, I would like to show you fundraising video I put together for Universal Ostrich Farms. And we are doing everything we can to help his family out right now, to help out Katie Pisitney and her family, because this farm is facing just tremendous, huge, monumental, colossal financial penalties, including paying the legal bill of the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, potentially paying for the operation. But that's all in this video, and I want you to watch it. David Crayden, independent broadcaster, commentator, writer, and journalist. I'm here today to tell you why you should support with your donation Universal Ostrich Farms. The fight is not over. In fact, in many ways, it's just beginning. Now, the voice and the face of that farm, especially during that brutal occupation by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency and the RCMP, was Katie Pisitney. She's been on this show with mine many, many times. And we've talked about that night of November 5th and early November 6th, when the CFIA marksmen slaughtered hundreds of ostriches. Some of them didn't die immediately. They lingered throughout the night. And this brutal organization finished the job in the morning. It was a nightmare for Katie, her mom, and all of the supporters who stood by and watched this atrocity unfold. And Katie buried her grief in her tears and the profound, profound depression that came over her as a result of this. But Katie has put her armor back on, and she's fighting back with a new association that's going to be called A Voice for Farmers. And as Katie likes to say, it's not that farmers have no voice. They need to be reminded that they have a voice. And that's Katie's new objective. Let's listen.
Farm out there will have a chance to have some support and never be left alone in limbo or feeling bullied by an agency that has had no accountability and no oversight for decades. Remembering that this agency is an agency that has performs its own internal investigations, performs its own audits. They are only accountable to themselves. So making sure that every farmer out there has the ability to reach out to a support network within that association, whether it be a team of some lawyers, a couple vets, people that are all willing to come and bring the professional backgrounds into one area that we can support our farmers, support our agricultural sector, and give everybody hope for a strong, independent, healthy future in Canada for our animals, for our dedicated farmers, and even all of our farmers with orchards and our food.
So why do you need to support Katie in this venture? Because this farm was ordered by the Supreme Court of Canada when it denied its appeal of this execution of their ostriches. The Supreme Court of Canada ordered the farm to pay the entire legal expenses of the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. That's about 11 months potentially. Could be millions of dollars. The farm could also potentially be on the hook for the costs of the RCMP CFIA occupation of their farm. That includes everything from the salaries of the officers to the bales of hay and the fencing that was purchased. That could also be a very hefty bill. And this farm has no guarantee that they're going to receive any compensation from the Mark Carney government, because the farm was not compliant through this process. So give today, donate today. Go to Justice for Our Ostriches. That's the new site. That's the new website that Katie will be running the fundraising and the association from. You can still go to Save Our Ostriches, which is still up and running. So I encourage you to do that today. Give generously today. This is about helping a farm and farmers in distress and helping Katie move on to her next objective. Yes, thank you for watching. It's been a pleasure being with you twice today. We'll be back again tomorrow with more of the news you need to know. We're going to continue to follow this Ponzi scheme that is the Canadian pension plan and how Mark Carney is manipulating things, because this could be the story that defines his tenure as Prime Minister of Canada. Everything else that's going on, that's really what's going on for Mark Carney. Thank you for watching today. We'll be back again tomorrow. I've been broadcasting live this afternoon from Ottawa. See you. Thank you for sharing this station with your friends and family. Thank you for hitting that like button. because I tell you, we are fighting back in a way I've never had to before, because I'm going to keep this station on the air. I'm going to keep fighting for freedom. I'm going to keep fighting for justice and truth. And I am damn determined to resist this Carney government in any way possible as it encroaches upon our individual freedom. And it will continue to do that, mark my words. I'll be back again tomorrow. Same time, same place. 10 a.m. This has been David Crayden, broadcasting live from our nation's capital in Ottawa. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow.